Welcome back to the world of cinematics, where we will again be talking about action scenes. And to start us off, we have Stefan, who uncharacteristically has chosen a fight that isn't as serious as one would deem.
It's not serious at all. It's not to be taken seriously
This is an art.
in any aspect. It's art of a lowbrow quality. So, this fight is from, I believe it aired with Family Guy.
Yes.
It's the crossover between Family Guy and The Simpsons. It's the Peter Griffin Homer Simpson fight. And the reason I chose this fight is it was one of my early introductions to The Simpsons and Family Guy. And because I used to think that the shows were just evil, being brought up in a religious environment, but they're not totally evil. I'll just put it that way. I'm not a fan of Family Guy, but I am a fan of their chicken fights. And so this was technically also the first chicken fight, even though there's no chicken in this fight. But just watching it and even showing it to my dad, it's a very funny fight, and I like it when cartoons punch each other. And I also like how over the top it is, and just how stupid it is. They're fighting over nothing, basically. So it starts off. They have some kind of disagreement, and Peter Griffin says that Simpsons suck. So then he punches him, and then Peter gets angry like that for all the chicken fights. And then they just start wailing on each other, and then he grabs Peter by the throat and starts strangling him. And he's like, "Ow, ow! What the heck? What was that all about? That really hurt." He said, "No, it doesn't. I do it to my son all the time." He's like, "Why, you strangle your son? You're a terrible father. No wonder he's fat and stupid and plays with himself all the time. That's your son!" And then they just keep fighting. They end up on a bus, and they have the little Chief Wiggins idiot kid in the back. They're like, hey, stop fighting. There's a kid back there. I'm in danger. And then they crash the bus, and they end up they end up in the nuclear plant, and he's throwing all his Emmys at Peter Griffin. He's like, hey, that's not fair. I don't got none of those. And then they fall in the chemical vat, and then they turn radioactive and punch each other different places. And Peter ends up in a cannon, and the Krusty the Clown's like, now remember, kiddies, cartoon violence is okay as long as you don't show a nipple. And he shoots them out. They keep fighting until they're in some flying saucer, and then Homer's radioactive powers run out, and Peter's flying over him. Ah, I see. I'm the only one with radioactive powers now, which I will use to. Oh, I talked too much. And then they crash, and they should be dead. Like, of all the chicken fights that I've seen, none is more over the top than this, because they literally go to a flying saucer, crash into a canyon, and then they keep fighting after that. They should be dead. They should be totally dead. They keep fighting, and Homer's pinned, and Peter grabs this giant rock to smash Homer with, like something you see at the finale of some 80s hard R action film. But instead of just letting his face get smashed, he screams like a girl, and then he sits up and he bites Peter in the groin. And then Peter starts drooling because of the pain and just twitching. And then Homer grabs a rock, but then the flying saucer crashes onto him, and he's splattered. He's like totally dead. All that's left is his torso up like this, and Peter gets up, brushes his hands, starts walking towards the sunset, as always, and then Homer goes, this fight was so ridiculous, so silly, so stupid, and that's why I enjoy it so much. All those things I mentioned, just so fun.
Yeah, there's kind of this. It's definitely this lowbrow quality with the fight that you come to expect from the chicken fights in Family Guy, anyways. But what made it even funnier is just all these Springfield references. Like, they cause a nuclear plant to blow up, basically, and it shows the after effect and, basically this total explosion that, disintegrates everything on one side of the town, but the other side of the town, it just wipes out their clothes. They're all just naked in the street. It shows just how gruesome, but also how hysterical, cartoon violence can be as well. So I think what made me enjoy it quite a bit is just the absurdity of it. They're basically the whole episode is built up on this Family Guy who's just copying The Simpsons, which is true, but it's owned by the same company, so who really cares? They just needed a reason for these two cartoon icons to fight each other. And this is what it would look like, over the top, basically superhero stuff. The only thing they're missing really is swashbuckling, other maybe some wrestling references. Otherwise it's got basically everything you'd come to expect from all types of fighting in general, and the humor behind it. There's tons of hidden jokes, and there's Stefan only mentioned a few of them, but those are probably the highlights.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about this fight is just the whole narrative purpose behind it. The whole reason they're fighting is Homer hates everything negative about Peter, and Peter hates everything negative about Homer. And both of them are too stupid to realize that they're the exact same things. They hate each other so much, not realizing they're the exact same thing. But then to go on top of that, people comparing Simpsons and Family Guy, this one's obviously better, this one's obviously better. They're the exact same thing. Only difference is, little things like, Simpsons has all these Emmys. No fair, we don't have any. Because Simpsons actually is better. Even though they're the same, Simpsons is better. Or at the end, when Homer's about to crush Peter's head with a rock, he says say hello to Maud Flanders, because everyone knows Maud Flanders dies. Even people who haven't seen Simpsons, before I saw it, Maud Flanders dies. And then he says, no, you say hello to Muriel whatever. I can't even remember the name. Homer's just like, who? Because Simpsons or Family Guy did something similar, and no one knows, no one cares. It's just, oh yeah, Simpsons already did it, and it was way better. And so it was they subtly and not so subtly worked into the fight that they're the exact same, except Simpsons is better, but really we shouldn't care.
Yeah, it's a cool fight. It's got everything you could ever want in a fight. And last week we talked about, some fight scenes like from Inception or Mission Impossible or John Wick. This one beats them all. It's got everything you could want. Superhero elements.
Doesn't have a shootout.
It doesn't have a shootout.
That's the one thing though. It has a car chase. It has superpowers. That's hand fighting.
Yeah, but it's awesome. You got these two, and they're even kind of two different races, because one of them's yellow. So you could even say it's a racial war.
Copyright war there.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the novelty of Homer Simpson fighting Peter Griffin. So, from what I understand, is that the episode crossover was it well received? I get conflicted.
People liked some parts of it, but other parts were this is dumb and contrived. One of the biggest backlashes I've ever seen is when Stewie, who thought Bart is the coolest guy ever, tries to do one of his phone pranks, and he goes way too dark and over the top. Yeah. And he's like, "Did I do it? How did I do?" And it was like, "That was too far." This is Stewie. This is what he does.
Yeah.
It's like being upset that Darth Vader killed someone. What did you expect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They kills the girl that's obsessed with him.
Right.
That's good stuff.
Well, and see, that's the thing and that's a great illustration to show why some audiences lean towards one group or the other. Is Family Guy pushes the boundaries even further than what I would say The Simpsons were doing and still are doing to this day. So it's interesting that they get upset, but it's well, if you watch consecutively enough Family Guy things, you would know. Yeah, Stewie's a bit of a jerk, and that's also a sociopath, a murderer, all these things that Bart, unless it's a Treehouse of Horror episode, tends not to be. So, kind of an interesting take on that. So,
yeah, Simpsons are less niche compared to Family Guy.
Yeah, Family Guy is a lot more shock value, whereas Simpsons is just clever writing. Yeah,
Right.
That's all it is, just being well written.
yeah, it's just better.
Well, I have nothing else to say of the fight. I think everything that could be said is that if you haven't seen it, recommend it. Even if you don't like either of them, well, you have to like at least one of them. But if you like at least one of them, then you'll definitely enjoy it. And yeah, that's how I got introduced to The Simpsons in a way. So.
Kind of feels like successor to the crazy balance of Looney Tunes, which
Yeah.
is again carried over in Simpsons with Itchy and Scratchy, but
Yeah.
just seeing that played out on the largest scale possible is great.
And adding blood to it.
Just a little.
Unlike the Looney Tunes. It's always ketchup or something.
Excellent. Well, Jed, you've been excited to talk about this one for a while.
Yes, I'm always excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite scenes from one of my favorite shows ever. Granted, I have problems with other things in this show, and even other things in this season, even other things in this episode, but I don't care because the Battle of the Bastards is one of my absolute favorite action scenes ever. It's character driven. It shows like the chaos of war and how nothing makes sense. But the whole time you're watching, everything makes sense because it focuses on just a few characters to show their journey throughout this. You see the importance of battle tactics, and you can say, oh yes, this side is winning because they're doing this. But you can also see, oh, it's not just bad planning that one side is losing. It's mistakes that they're making due to emotional reasons. It's character driven, not just in its focus, but also in all the decisions that are made. Not to mention the cinematography is gorgeous. Multiple shots in it will go down in television history as some of the best in, the most famous ever. It also has some incredible, I don't know how else to put it, but action. I mean, the one shot where you're watching, Jon Snow run through this crazy battle and someone's about to stab him in the back, but then a horse out of nowhere, boom, runs him over. Or watching this hail of arrows just killing all these people and creates bodies and mounts, an obstacle on the battlefield, and the desperation that it makes. You watch the claustrophobia being trampled over and trying to gasp for air just to survive, not being trampled to death by your own men. Oh my gosh, it has everything. It's dramatic, it's scary, it's violent, but oh my gosh, at the end, when finally hope is returned, it's such a relief. And it ends with one of the biggest cheer-worthy moments in the entire show, where you watch one of the great heroes. We had him on our list of greatest television heroes, beating to death someone who almost made our list of greatest TV villains. And I could go on for hours, but it's one of my favorite television scenes ever.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking awesome. I like a lot of the shots Judge was talking about. The part where John is just, he realizes that, he's screwed, his brother just died, and he doesn't have a horse, but the enemy's cavalry is charging him. And he has two choices. He could either turn around, run back to his men, and try to get some support there. But in reality, there's not enough time to do that in his mind. So he just draws his sword, drops his sheath, knowing that he's probably not going to sheath it again. This is going to be his last battle. So he just drops the sheath. That's kind of how I took it. And I really like that because it just shows his bravery. He's already died once in the show, so he's like, what's once more? And he's okay with not going back.
The person who brought him back is there, and he's telling you, please don't bring me back.
Yeah, he's ready to go, and he just lost his brother, and he knows he kind of screwed over his own strategy of winning. So he's just like, well, we're just gonna fight, or I am, and if my guys fight with me, that's great. And the shot where he charges in, and the arrows are flying down on him, but he barely doesn't get hit. He has a little bit of plot armor in this, whether the aiming of the arrows is off, or if somebody right behind him is about to hit him, like Jess said, get taken out. That happens a couple of times, but it all feels so chaotic that's semi-believable. Like, oh yeah, in a battle, it got to the point for me where you might not even know if you're hitting your own guy, because they all just covered in mud and blood. Luckily, the bad guys had big old shields with big white X's on them, so that was pretty easy to figure out. So, but yeah, I think the battle is great. The ending is satisfying. It's a better medieval fight. I wouldn't say it's so much fantasy because the only fantasy element was the giant, which counts. But when I think of fantasy, I think of like Narnia battles. Those are cool. But this is still a very superb fight.
No, absolutely. Something that I appreciate in this battle is very much the claustrophobia of it, because you start off with wide shots. You see the two opposing armies. You see John try to save Rickon, his brother. Doesn't succeed because Bolton Ramsey has shot him. And then, as soon as the cavalry charges in from either side, that's when it starts to feel more claustrophobic. Like I said, they've got people getting killed on either side of him. He's killing people, and then the bodies start to pile up. You know, it's making this wall just around them. Which, if you've studied warfare in history, this is a very common thing. Whether it's with artillery or whether it's with swords or just whatever you happen to have with you with a bunch of your friends, this is what happens. And then not only does this happen, but Bolton's army surrounds them in this kind of, it's more than a semicircle. It's more like a C at this point. And they've got their spears, they got their shields, and it just slowly just coming in closer, coming in closer. And then have people on the other side of this mound charging down and attacking them. And every couple minutes, they just come closer and closer to the point where Jon Snow is literally trying to climb his way out just so he can breathe, because he's getting stomped on. People are getting beat up, slaughtered, you know, and it's just, I don't feel claustrophobic often when I watch a film, but just realizing all these bodies on top of them and, you know, all these things, I feel claustrophobic. And I just have to say, it's really well done with the photography there, because yeah, that's really hard thing to do, is to give this idea that you with Jon Snow are just being covered with all these bodies, all these people stomping on top of you. Makes you very uncomfortable. And you know, that sells so well that when the release does come with another cavalry charging in to save the day, that release and eventual killing of Ramsay, or I should say capture of Ramsay, is really well done, because you as the audience are finally able to breathe again and breathe normally. And so I wanted to say it's just really well done with just building on that claustrophobia, just really tightness of it all.
Gimli feels your pain.
Yeah.
He knows what it's like to have body upon bodies on top of you. Something that Jeff pointed out is the comparison of Daenerys and Misa and them lifting her up, and she's sort of like, whereas Jon is like struggling for breath and has to go through all this dirty, grimy, bloody stuff. And then when you think about it, you know, for me, I know the outcome of the show, unfortunately. So for me, just watching him being birthed from death, spoiler, he died, but if you don't know already, him being birthed from death, from this tribulation, from his own stupid mistakes, and learning from all those things, you know, neither of them have had a life of relative ease. But her plight is probably a bit easier than his, I would argue. I mean, they both lost loved ones and everything else, but
Once she got her dragons, most everything is
it's going to be pretty easy for you. Yeah, it will be given or surrendered like that. And once you find out you're fireproof, that's pretty helpful too. But Jon Snow is not fireproof, and he has no dragons, and he's very much the underdog, which is why people probably rooted for him when it came out originally. It's like, yeah, let's root for Jon Snow. He's the bastard. He's the illegitimate child, and he's born from all this dirt and grime, and he makes stupid mistakes. But that, you know, I challenge anyone to say that they perform better given the circumstances. But the battle helps you to really root for him, because the bad guy, he's, you know, and it's normal for commanders to observe and everything, but he's treating it like a game or a spectator sport, rather, and he's not really invested in his men or in his players if it is a game. But Jon is invested in his players. You see that as he observes what's going on. He sees, I can't just die, they'll die too. So all of those things coming together, like character moments, I think are very, very well done, which makes the finale make me want to gag a little bit. But we're getting to that. We'll get to that later.
Maybe someday.
Well, we'll see it,
Yes,
is what I mean.
yes.
We'll see it.
But before we continue, unless we had any other thoughts.
Robert?
Yeah, I forgot to ask Robert last time.
Oh, I just wanted to, one more thought that just popped into my head. You know, Steph was talking about the characterization of Ramsey specifically. It's not just that he doesn't have any regard for the lives of his men.
Yeah.
Part of his plan is to kill plenty of his men because he sends lots of his cavalry over there to die. Oh, look, there's enough of my men and their men. Okay, let's start shooting as many arrows as we can because we need a big body wall of bodies. Doesn't matter that some of them are going to be mine because I'm going to win at the end, and this is how.
Right.
Ruthless.
Totally ruthless.
Well, and it's kind of stupid. It shows that he is smart and, you know, strategically, but still, you're losing your own men.
Right.
Maybe he would have saved men by killing himself and had the reinforcements not come.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, this battle is very, very cool. You don't see very much like this anymore. People compare it to like the best battle in Lord of the Rings to a lot of people. One single battle, Helm's Deep is the best, and I would say those two are the closest ones in terms of just groundedness and not having trolls and stuff. You know, it's just they're all humanoid beings
Yeah,
fighting.
you have one guy who's big, and then in Lord of the Rings, you have one guy who's small.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Right. So I think that's a fair comparison. But this one really goes all out to show the claustrophobia of battle, I think.
Yeah.
With these type of battles.
Mhm.
And nowadays.
The pitched battle, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Nowadays,
Right.
like this.
It's also super quick, which is something that sometimes, you know, we want to drag the battles out. But by comparison to a lot of battles, it's pretty quick.
Maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sometimes that's how battles are.
Yeah.
You know, if you have sufficient forces, you can overrun somebody like that.
Yeah.
I like that too.
No, absolutely. Just like Brendan was saying, comparable to Helm's Deep, and both are good on-screen versions of sieging,
Yeah.
seizing, but also just open battlefield. So that's a great way to illustrate what we would like to see in future battles as well.
Maybe the Rings of Power show will give us a little taste of this.
I
We
mean,
hope.
One can hope.
There is that shot in the trailer where the one, I don't know if you know, but the blonde dude in the trailer is like kind of clenched up, kind of like Jon Snow, and he's like, oh.
Elrond looks like he's being torn away from a battle on a shot. So maybe.
It look, you know the shot I'm talking about, the blonde dude,
Yep.
and he's like all
Yeah,
Jon
the
Snow.
weird.
Yeah, it's not all
CG.
wet.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like draw the comparison. I'm like, did they just stole that?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely have thoughts about that when it comes out. We'll see if they're good or bad. Okay, well we've stolen your time away, Robert. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
the
what are
Battle
your
of the
thoughts?
Bastards?
I mean, you guys pretty much said it all. I think for me, I appreciate the fact that with the cinematography, you're following Jon Snow, but it's showing how much chaos is actually in battle, specifically that kind of battle. And I think I love the Battle of Helm's Deep. Don't get me wrong, but you don't see as much chaos as you do in the
Yeah.
Battle of the Bastards, which I appreciate. That's about all I got.
No, that's a great comparison too, because once again, playing, open field battles are going to be a lot more chaotic because you're not going to have someone in a standing position to just give orders out like King Theoden does, and he can just basically whisper to anybody. Then they just, hopefully it's a good game of telephone, but whatever. But yeah, no, I think that's a good comparison. All right. But if there's nothing else,
Yeah, let's move on.
let's move on. Brendan, you chose a very good one. Well, I think we've all chose very good, but this one is very pleasing to the eye.
Yeah, so the one I chose was from a cartoon, American anime. I don't know what classification.
Animated show. I don't know.
It's animated. It's an animated style. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it's one of the last battles in the original Avatar: Last Airbender show. It's the last Agni Kai, and this goes on about the same time that Aang is fighting the Fire Lord, and Sokka, them are destroying the ships, the airships. And in this battle, just to preface it, it's Zuko versus Azula. And they had fought multiple times in the past, and you could always tell that Azula was better. I mean, she was so skilled that apparently the fire she could bend would be blue, which to me is just like, wow, she's the best fighter ever. Or I don't know how that happens, but it might just be a visual choice, not just a choice. But it's really cool with her character because you just know right off the bat she's special, she's talented. So in this battle, Zuko challenges her when the plan was for him and Katara to fight her. He senses that she's not on her A game. She's kind of crazy. Her hair is all cut all weird, and it's not even stylized. It's just crap. So he goes in to fight her, and in this scene, I really like the music. It's just very kind of slow paced, violence, operatic. That's a good word. And just the overtopness of the firebending because it's the Sozer's comet. It's just very, very kind of beautiful to look at. And there's a point where Zuko finally gets the upper hand, and you can tell that he's gonna tempt her into lightning bending because he knows how to shoot that right back at her, and that would be it. That's his plan. He knew that was gonna work from the beginning. She's going crazy. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good gift. And we see that this plan is going to work, and as the audience, you're like, oh, we know what he's going to do. She's going to fall for it, but she's still a little bit there. She still has a plan. She sees Katara, and she knows that he can redirect her lightning, so she aims the lightning at Katara, which then causes Zuko to not do the redirecting right, and he sacrifices himself to save Katara, which I think is a good character moment because they kind of have a rocky-ish relationship. It's pretty good at that point, but throughout the whole show, she kind of hates him. He kind of thinks less of her, but then he's trying to get on the good side. It just shows how far they've gone, and he saves her life, and it's just really cool. And I wouldn't say that's where the fight ends, not for me, just because there's still stuff going on. It's called the last Agni Kai, but it's not even the last Agni Kai, to be honest. There's a game called the Agni Kais in the chorus show, so
It's the last one of the show.
yeah, the last one.
It's the last one that we give a crack at.
So I'm not even going to say that that's the end of the fight because Katara ends up, trying to stay alive. She's way out of her league at this point. Sozin's comment once again, and there's barely any water. All she has is just like her little pouch or whatever. And it's just cool to see her just try to run and just get out of there because she's just shooting lightning. She's shooting to kill with every shot. She's not playing around anymore. Azula is. But then Katara does one of the coolest comebacks ever and outsmarts her and ends up freezing her. And I just love that so much. I actually like this battle more than the Sozin versus Aang, just because of how desperate it is and how Azula doesn't go out like a punk. I think she's kind of more of a threat to these two than Sozin is to Aang after Aang gets his powers back. So I think that's why this fight's more interesting to watch. And the music is just superb. So.
I've always loved how this fight, it's about these two siblings that have this terrible toxic relationship with each other, and it's about which one's going to come out on top, all that stuff. Yes. It's also, this is metaphorical for the fight for the soul for the Fire Nation. Because all those generations ago, one bad person in power has twisted what was once a good nation, just like any other, into this oppressive, evil, fascist dictatorship that's trying to conquer and kill everyone. And you see, as you're in the third season, as they're traveling throughout Fire Nation, it's filled with good people. It's filled with people who are being misled by propaganda or who are fighting back however they can or who are being oppressed too. And so you see just, Zuko, who was bad, but you see him, how he is risen above these generations of abuse, thanks to his uncle and also the other experiences that he had. You see how he is trained from the original firebenders and how this old way is better than this new twisted, corrupted way, not just in firebending, but their culture, the people. You see how his training with the dragons is better than killing the dragons. And so it's only at this moment that Zuko is strong enough, not just because Azula is lacking control, but now Zuko has the both the plot, spiritual, metaphorical, upper hand, but also that training that now you see he fights differently now. There's more, instead of like I'm going to punch at you, it's more fluid, it's more natural, and so he's able to not just overcome his sister who's a prodigy, but show, hey, the Fire Nation isn't just evil bending Nazis. They're people. They're real people. They're real people who are going to fight to take back what should have been theirs, but had been twisted and turned evil over these generations.
Absolutely. And just kind of building off of that, well, first, I think we can all agree. The music so far in the previous battles, Peter versus Homer, is very much just the chicken fight, and it's good for the scene. Battle of the Bastards has some really good stingers towards the end. Well, really, I would argue
The very beginning at the very end.
end, exactly. So nothing too memorable, but that's because of the chaos of the battles, and that makes sense. But as far as just that operatic feel, this because it is very operatic, even you would say soap opera. You might cringe at that, but it is because it's about two siblings trying to fight each other. One is trying to kill the other. The other is willing to extend mercy if he can. But just building off of what Jed was saying as far as where Zuko is and his mindset, he's very much learned how to trust. He's learned how to adapt, and he's learned how to bring in just the things that he's learned by being in the Earth Kingdom, how water bending works, all these things. Whereas, Azula, she's learned to adapt, but she doesn't learn to trust. She doesn't learn to grow beyond what she's learned because she believes that she's learned everything she needs to. And if she continues to perfect the things that she knows, that's all she needs to succeed in life. And it's very interesting to see that because both are at one point very much on equal grounds. But even when she throws in the largest fire blasts at him, he is able to just do smaller blasts and still is unscathed, which is incredible. And it's interesting because it really is, as we've often said, is by small and simple things, great things are brought to pass. This battle really, really shows that. And it really complements, Brendan says he prefers this battle over Ozai versus Aang, and I got nothing against that. I would say the two complement each other really well as the siege of Ba Sing Se, which is happening. These three battles are happening at the same time. And I think that one without the other, and this is just a personal thought, doesn't work as well because it's within these different battles that we see just this, are they going to succeed? Are they going to succeed? But then suddenly something happens, something changes, something clicks, and that's when they start to win. And they do it so well, so very well. And it's such a shame because you watch their sequel series with Korra, and their ending battles, aside, I would say, probably from the first season, possibly the third, they don't ever have a moment like that for their final battles. And if their goal was to try to outdo it, then they succeeded. But if they were trying to find something that was on par, they don't quite meet that either. So it's just something that obviously some careful planning took place in the writing as well as the screenplay and everything else. So overall, just really well done. I think it complements the other battles just so very well.
Now, don't shoot me, but there's a comparison to be made to when you have Ozai fighting Aang to General Grievous fighting Obi-Wan. In that, if you succeed, the war is essentially over.
Yeah.
And while that, and I will say Ozai versus Aang is obviously better, right? Better interaction overall than Kenobi and Grievous. But the reason I think the Agni Kai sticks out is because you take ending the war, which is a big deal, versus the personal stakes of Anakin and Obi-Wan. And it's just like Azula and Zuko, where somebody is so warped and twisted that they would hate their own brother, essentially. And, obviously, there's one that feels better. And I think that's why at least I feel more invested in that by comparison. And it is cool for Aang and everything else, but there's no emotional interactions. The Fire Lord's just the big bad guy you have to defeat. He's just the final boss versus the stakes of people who actually have a relationship. And it's sad to watch somebody be filled with so much hate that they would go to these lengths and attempts to murder their own brother as well as his friend, because she has no friends at this point. I think for me, that is why we connect more with this. We tend to connect more with this fight.
I'm sorry, I shot you.
I will kill you than with Ozai.
No, I think those are very, very good comparisons. Like I said, I think all three are really well melded together. Would I say I like one more than the other? Not really, because there are moments where the music stings for me that work really well, even with something as simple as Uncle Iroh burning the Fire Nation emblem.
Yeah.
I don't need much more than that. Do I? Just seeing him blast down Ba Sing Se's wall with just this, 3 breaths, that's enough for me. But I understand very much so, because I will agree 100% the emotional conflict, as far as personal, it's easily the best in that battle. But I think it also goes to show that not every battle is going to be personal, and I think they do that very well.
Right. Like, with Iroh, I love his personal stakes of the last time he was trying to fight to get into Ba Sing Se was when his son died, and he was doing this as a conqueror. But now, it's never stated explicitly, but I've always kind of read into a lot of his expressions. This is him doing for his country what should be done. He's doing for his son what he should have done years ago. He's fighting to liberate. And then, with Aang and Ozai, the pacifism, okay, great. The conflict, is he going to kill him? We kind of figured he's probably not going to. It's a kids' show, and they want to say that pacifism is good. That's the whole message. Well, one of the messages with Aang. Although I do love so many of Ozai's lines in that fight. But ultimately, the best one is Zuko and Azula. That close personal relationship that both of them have, the conflict stretching across multiple levels, it's perfect. I love it. What about you, Robert?
I kind of want to build off of what Stefan was saying, because character development is a huge portion within this fight. Because we have gone 3 seasons with knowing about their sibling rivalry. And it used to be kind of equal, where Zuko really did not like Azula, and Azula didn't really care about her brother. But it's not until this portion right here where we see the change in Zuko. And mind you, this change came from Uncle Iroh. So this whole time we hear about Zuko, going through all these hardships and stuff. And Iroh was always there, like, don't worry, Zuko, you'll get over it, kind of thing. Meanwhile, Uncle Iroh, he's been stuck with his own prison, and we get to see his relief as well as he's burning down the flag, while we're also seeing Zuko calmly take care of one of his family. And he doesn't, berate her or anything, say, I got this, she's not a problem. Instead, he's like, something's wrong with her. I'm going to see if I can talk some sense, help her. Versus Ozai and Aang, I love the fight. I love the choreo. I love the amount of power. I like power. The amount of power that's in it. But we don't really have that character building experience that we had with Ozai, like we did with Azula as a antagonist. We had a lot with Aang, but it's kind of a one-sided character battle for us, because we're all like, oh yeah, I'm all for it. Whereas here, we're like, we have seen Azula's past, and we're like, I kind of want her to get help. So it makes it more of a emotional conflict. And I think that's why it's one of my favorites. Plus, also the flames are just beautiful in this fight. Can we
Yeah.
just mention the artwork on that? It's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. Like everyone said, it's he goes there. Katara says, "Why are you doing this, Akikai? You know you can't beat her alone." And he says, "I know. There's something off about it. I need to just tell her that she's gonna lose."
And this way, no one else has to be hurt.
That's true. And I think that's a big difference between these two characters. Azula, and they mentioned this throughout the story, she has friends through fear. Her friends have to be her friends because she's the princess and because she's powerful and scary and blah, blah, blah. And Zuko learns that friends are people who, look out for each other because you care about them. And that's what she sees as his weakness. And she sees friends as a weakness at this point in the story, because her friends had left her because they weren't scared of her anymore. So I thought it was really cool just thinking about that. She uses Katara as his weakness, but in the end, it's Katara who beats her because she was saved by Zuko.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool that it's kind of the whole friendship over fear thing, love over fear. Love will conquer fear. A little message in there, so I think that's kind of cool.
Defeated by the power of friendship, but in a good way.
Yes.
If you're going to do,
Little Harry Potter in there.
yeah, exactly. If you're going to do the defeated by power of friendship, this is how you do it. You show that his greatest weakness is actually his greatest strength because he does have good friends.
You mean the
And
Power Rangers lied to me?
Yes. But do we have anything else to say? I think we covered that one really well. So, all right. So my turn. So I am doing an anime dubbed.
Oh, we're gonna get a lot of hate in the comments for this.
Take with what
It's
you
okay.
will.
It's okay. I
But,
also have a dubbed.
Yeah, I do like if I can only get it subbed. That's how I do it. But I don't mind English because that's my first language. So there you have it. But I'm doing Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, just to be clear. Nothing against the other one. I haven't seen it all the way, but Brotherhood. And it's Scar versus Pure King Bradley. And just a little context with this battle. This is part of the larger battle that's going on for Central. And basically, Pure King Bradley is pretty beaten up. He's actually lost one of his eyes at this point. And you have Scar, who has to distract him while Full Metal and his group take on Father down below. And the battle is really brutal. Like I said, Fear King Bradley has already lost an eye. He's bleeding, and yet he's still standing. And this isn't the first time we thought he's died that day. He managed to escape a train explosion on a bridge and managed to walk all the way back to Central. And we've got Scar, who's a little battle stricken because he's been fighting all day as well. And for context, for those who haven't seen the show, Fear King Bradley also managed to fight and scare off a tank and then kill everybody in the tank with nothing but a sword. So if you think this is going to be a quick fight with someone who can literally destroy anything just by touching it, you got another thing coming. And it's very quick. The dialogue in the scene is very, very important because you have one man, Scar, who is very, very religious. He's an Ishvalan, which is another term for basically a Jew in this fictional world. And then you have Fear King Bradley, who's an atheist. And they kind of have this, it's mostly King Bradley talking throughout this battle. And he's basically tempting him, saying, has your God abandoned you? If he loved you, why would he let your people all die? All these things that you discover, after fighting, there's just all these different things. You realize that Scar has actually accepted both sides of alchemy. So now one hand can create things while the other hand can destroy, which is pretty cool because if you think about it, that's how God is like, right? And that's kind of been his whole thing is, man should not have this power, but he decides to do it because it's for sanctity and safety of the world. And Scar continues to nag at him. These explosions and the fights, and it's very well choreographed, very quick. In fact, when we were trying to look for images for this fight scene, we could only find mostly GIFs or GIFs, depending on what part of the country you're from. And there's a reason for that, is because there's not very many still moments in this battle. There's talking, but even while there's fighting, there's talking. And the music has so many callbacks to other moments in the series. And if you kind of have that nostalgia for those other moments, it builds off of it, and ends with a very bloody conclusion where Fear King Bradley loses both his arms and still manages, and this is the part that Jed didn't quite like, but I understand, is Fear King Bradley takes a piece of the sword that's been broken, grabs it with his teeth, and then proceeds to stab Scar in the stomach as well, which, like I said, not very believable, but if you've seen the show, that's not the most unbelievable thing you'll see. So, anime, what can I say about it? But yeah, I could keep talking about this, but I'll go ahead and open it to the floor. I think it's a very good fight.
It's essentially if actually not semi, just a serial killer Moses type figure fights a super soldier Adolf Hitler. That's the kind of fight that you're getting. And so if you're invested in watching either side be in pain or get punished or whatever floats your boat, that's a good fight for you. I would recommend watching the whole series first. I saw the fight before I saw the series, and while I was like, yeah, that's pretty impressive, I didn't understand the context behind it all. But after watching the whole series up to that fight, I was like, oh my goodness, this may be their best fight. There's another one that I really like, but it's not much of a fight. It's basically a guy snapping his fingers and burning somebody alive. So, but I really like this fight. I really like what's said during this fight. I like the ideas behind this fight, the arguments that they're having. I don't know that there's much more for me to say about it.
I mean, I haven't seen the series, and I always give something that I haven't seen before. Like, okay, you got one dumb thing that's gonna make me like, oh, I don't like that. But if you have one dumb thing like that and everything else is great, I'll give it a pass. So my one dumb thing is biting onto a sword and stabbing someone with it. But it's anime, I can forgive it. As somebody who's never seen anything from this show, other than like the odd scene here or there, I gotta say I loved this fight scene, not just because of the incredible choreography or animation. It did a great job of, for someone who's never seen it, I understand the character conflict like that. I understand, oh, this guy's an evil government dictator guy, and the other guy is some sort of religious guy who isn't doing what he should be. Not just that, it's he's actively choosing to do things that are heretical. He knows that this is, not evil, but this is something that goes against everything he believes in. But he's choosing to do it because he needs to do it. He thinks it is worth it for this, this greater cause. And you see the it's not a decision lightly made, but it's one that is not, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. It's, I don't want to do this, but I'm 100% going to do. There's no regret. And you see I remember someone talking about a movie. There's an end fight in that movie, how it was just two people staring at each other. The fight's about to go down. It's like an old samurai movie where you just have the two people, it's all about this. At the end of the day, it's all about just the conflict between these two people, and there's great ramifications from it, but it's still just these two people and the smallest conflict you could have with those two people. Making it as big as possible, but it never forgets that it's about the relationship that these two people have, why they're fighting. Neither one of them forgets the sacrifices, even down to individual fight moves that they'll make. I learned, you can learn a lot about the characters and the conflicts that they're going through just by simple things like, oh, what fight moves do I use? What do I say to the other person? What do I stay silent about? It was a dramatic powerhouse, and yeah, I really liked that scene.
Yeah, no, Bradley's kind of like because there's seven of the
Homunculus.
and he's kind of like the Batman one
Yeah.
in a way because he just has a normal human body, but he has a super god eye or whatever that allows him to perceive things differently. And he's been training like Captain America or Batman his whole life, so he's kind of like just below superhuman level. So I always enjoyed his homunculi the most because I kind of like that sort of character. The rest of them are just powerhouses or obnoxious or harder to kill. You would think this guy Bradley would be the easiest one to kill, but in reality, he's probably the most dangerous one. If you're stuck in a room, you would not want to be with Bradley. You wouldn't want to be with anyone.
No.
But Bradley is the one you would underestimate. But I really wanted him to turn to the light side.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is my own little theory. I was like, oh, he really does love his son. He really does love his son, just the way he interacts with him throughout the show. So during that fight, or just during those last episodes, I was hoping to turn. But after watching it and seeing what they did, I was actually like, okay, I see what they're doing. It wasn't planned out for him to be a good guy. And at the end, he does admit that maybe there is a God, So he does kind of change his perception of life. So that was kind of cool. But it was a fight that was over the top. It will go down in history as one of the fights in anime.
Yeah.
One of the five.
One of the fights in-
But no, the emotional level is very good. It's very much a critique of religion versus very religious zealot that is kind of breaking his own rules, like Jed was mentioning. So it's very, very interesting fight, and I enjoyed it.
Robert, did you have anything?
Yeah. So one thing I do got to say is that part of what all animes do, specifically ones that have fight scenes, they like to go over the top, but that's so they can exaggerate the story. Because if you think about it, it's animation.
Yeah.
How can you enforce the impact with 2D? 3D is not that hard to do, like a good impact, or like live action. It's not that, like, look at Superman. It's not that hard to kind of ground realism. Whereas 2D, it's like, how do I enforce how much power these guys have? And I feel like they did a good job at keeping it pretty grounded compared to most animes.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, as a guy who watches it frequently, it does keep it pretty well grounded. But I'm kind of with Brendan. I was really hoping that Bradley would end up becoming a good guy. But I gotta say, his reveal to be a bad guy is so cool.
Yes.
Because he's the homunculi wrath. Because you got the 7 deadly sins. That's all the homunculi, and he's wrath, and it's so cool how he does. Because he's wearing an eye patch over his god eye thing. What's it called, Aaron? Is it the philosopher's stone he has in his eye, or what's up?
Yeah, so he has the philosopher's stone in his core, but the Ouroboros tattoo is what's on his eye.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he has that thingy on his eye, and it just the reveal of like, I'm Wrath. Hi, how's it going? So casual. And he is definitely not someone to be messed with.
No, absolutely. And just to give so you don't have to Google it later, Ouroboros is basically a snake that eats itself. So it's a paradox.
Swallowing its own tail.
Yep. So the fact that these homunculus exist is a paradox. And it's great because if you look at each of the characters of the homunculi, they are paradoxes of themselves, just within their character. Because when you look at Wrath, because you don't realize he's Wrath at the beginning of the show, he seems like this chipper old man who's happens to be very skillful with the sword.
Very calm and collected.
Yes, very calm and collected, very nice fella. But no, he's actually has this cold wrath towards humanity. He hates everybody, and he wants everybody to die. His only focus is to do what his father, the father of the homunculi, that's his only goal. And the reason we all kind of had that hope, oh, maybe he'll turn into a good guy. is because greed, another homunculus, does end up fighting for humanity, but not for the reasons he'll admit to, which is pretty interesting. But that's a whole nother character. So, but yeah. But is there any other thoughts on this or
Like, cool.
fight? Cool, cool. We got one more, and this one is Robert's.
Yeah, I was struggling to try and figure out a TV fight scene I liked. Because we excluded Marvel and all that other stuff. I was like, oh, well, okay.
Person of interest.
I would do Person of Interest, but most of the fighting in there is he shoots him in the kneecaps and calls it good.
Or yeah, he slaps him around a bit.
Yeah, or he slaps him around a bit. Like there's one specific one specific scene that I find hilarious in Person of Interest. That's when he throws him out the window. That's the end of the scene.
Yes.
So, so I was like, okay, what in the world am I supposed to pick? So I picked Rengoku versus Akuza. I'm gonna get called out for calling the names wrong. Oh well. But this is the only one I could think of. I was going through my head of what I could do, but long story short, demon slayers, they don't like each other, and they decided to go at it. Now, Akuza, I'll pull it up again. The one on the right, he is a top tier demon, so he's right underneath the big bad guy. And Rengoku, the one that was on the left, he is what's known as a Hashira. He's one of the strongest demon slayers. And he specializes in a breathing technique, which is fire. Now, these demon slayers, they learn this breathing technique to help them give them a little burst of energy to be able to fight these guys because they're inhuman. And the only way to kill them is if you cut off their head or throw them in the sunlight, which they don't like. Now, with this fight, you don't really actually get to know Rengoku that well throughout the series. It's only this season. Why? Because he's dead. He dies.
Yeah.
It's very sad. It is actually pretty sad. Like, they do a pretty good job, in my opinion. I don't know what your guys' opinions are, and I don't really care. But
Wow.
in my
How are we doing a podcast?
hey man,
Respect.
I am honest in all my dealings. So
Well, if we're gonna be honest, then
it's okay, Stefan. Tell me how you really feel. It's gonna be the next fandom Accords. It's just absolutely hate.
He's like the Grinch who hates anime.
Ah, humbug. I know anime gets a lot of hate, but I do really enjoy it, mostly because I don't know. I'm not really interested in a lot of things, so when I do find something I am interested in, I'm like, might as well go all in. So I did. And with this fight, one thing to say is that the stylization, because you don't actually, in the world, you don't actually see the fire coming from the blade or anything, which is why the art style for their fighting is different. Different coloring, different animation style than the people. It's because it's just to help the show, the viewers see the different kind of fighting styles.
I was wondering about that. I didn't know if the fire was like literal or not, if it was just part of the art.
Yeah, no, so
Fire's not-
yeah, it's not actually there. It's kind of to help the viewer see like, oh, so he's using a flame technique.
Okay, cool.
Because it like you could there's a few YouTube videos out there where they actually took out the art and be like, this is what everyone in that world is seeing. It's just someone being able to hit hard. That's kind of why I mentioned earlier how anime has a tendency to go on over the board on physics to help show the point of how much power is behind it all. Like the deforming of rocks when they hit the ground. Stuff like that. And in this fight, you get to see like the difference in power. Like Rengoku's supposed to be a strong Hashira, but he dies. He loses to this higher level demon. And Tanjiro, the main character, whose goal is to turn his sister back human, he sees how much of a gap there is between him and his enemy. Because he's not even aiming for this guy specifically. He's trying to get to his boss. So he is outmatched, and I think it sets a good tone. This fight sets a good tone for the character and for what's going to happen on in the future. Which, if you're reading the actual story, it does get more and more darker.
Yeah.
English may be my first language, but it's also my last. That's pretty much all I got. I put this one in here because of the camera and way they did the art.
I really like the emotional part of it, just the whole fact that this top tier demon slayer is giving it his all, and you know he's the best of the best, and it's clear that he's one of the best. Just the way they fight the first train demon, because there's two demons in the movie, right? There's the train demon, then there's this like top tier demon, if I'm remembering correctly, and the train demon it's really hard to defeat, but they end up killing him. And then this top tier demon pops out, and he's just another level, another 10 levels above. And you just get the sense of hopelessness that this top tier demon slayer, what's his name, Rengoku?
Yeah, Rengoku.
Rengoku, yeah, he can't even beat this demon, and it's just like, holy crap, we are way out of our league. Like, this is a hopeless battle. But the fact that Rengoku continues to fight and continues to try without, you know, giving in to defeat or anguish or whatever is just, it's really inspiring. And that's what a lot of animes do. They really just try to do that last moment, inspiring moment where, you know, Rengoku's dying, but he has one more swing left in him that surprises the enemy, and it's all inspiring and all that. I think it's really cool. It's really well done in this. And the art style, like Robert was saying, with the whole fire and everything, really cool. And you see the main character, what's his name?
Tanjiro?
Tanjiro.
That's Tanjiro.
Tanjiro. You see him, like Robert said, he's just like, holy cow, this guy's way out of my league, and the guy he's fighting is way out of everyone's league. And it's just like, kind of like, oh, this is sad. But the fact that Rengoku doesn't give up is just really, really inspiring to Tanjiro. So I really like the emotional impact of this fight, and it's really good. It's just crazy to think that there's demons even stronger than that guy. And it just makes you think, how in the heck are they gonna win in the end? You know. So it got me interested in what they're gonna do in the next seasons.
I gotta throw this out there real quick because I just recently found out why the higher tier demon went there in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the higher tier demon was actually sent by his boss to go kill Tanjiro. Because Tanjiro is a descendant of the only is this spoilers? Do you guys want to hear this?
He's a cool dude.
He's a really cool dude.
He's a cool dude. He's got earrings that Japanese love. But anywho, he went there originally to go kill him, failed because of Rengoku. He actually ended up getting punished by his master because he didn't succeed in his mission. He's like, but I killed a Hashira. He's like, that doesn't matter because the only one I care about is the one with the earrings. So, just a side note there. I figured I'd let you know.
I was kind of, well, I'll go.
Yeah, I just have a small thing because, you know, I haven't seen the series. I don't really know a whole lot about it. But one of the things I love most about at the beginning of the fight is a subtle use of powers that instantly kind of showed you, oh, this guy's screwed. I mean, if, you know, normal person gets attacked by someone else with a sword, you figure the guy with the sword is going to win. But if the unarmed guy catches the sword, but he doesn't catch it, you know, by grabbing it with his hand, he just holds his fist out and allows the sword to penetrate straight in until it stops. You're like, oh gosh, he didn't even flinch. When the sword gets pulled out, heals up all the way. How do you fight against that? It's a great way to immediately, right off the bat, with, you know, without any dialogue, just a small little thing, establish the stakes and just how impossible it is to beat this guy. So yeah, it was a great way to set the tone and set the field for the fight.
Yeah, to build off of that, he then proceeds to lick any blood that happens to be on the side of his hand. You know, it shows what kind of character you're going up against. man, you don't want to fight that. Yeah, no, I agree. I do. I really do like the emotional level on this because throughout the season or the movie, depending on how you look at it, you discover a little bit more about his backstory, Rengoku, and you see that his father never tells him that he's going to be successful. Why are you even bothering to try? But then it's his mother who's giving him this assurance, and his younger siblings want to be like him, and you see what he's fighting for. And so by the time that, and what's really cool is they're stuck in a lock by towards the end of the fight here, where he stabbed the demon stabbed him with his hand, and the sun is coming up, and the demon has to leave. And instead of letting him just run for it, he tries to keep him in there as long as he can so that the sun can finish him off. And you can tell that this demon is truly terrified. He ends up leaving his hand in Rengoku so that he can get a chance to leave. And then you have Tanjiro throw his sword, and he manages to hit this demon at a great length, I might add. And it just goes to show how inspiring Rengoku is to just all the demon slayers, because as he's dying, he says some final words, and then he sees his mother's ghost as he's entering into the other side. And it's really powerful moment. I think it's really well done. I think it's well earned. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw Rengoku, I thought this is the most weird, character I've seen in this show. Because he's got the spiky hair, he's got these big eyes, he's smiling all the time, and he's yelling all the time. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this character. I did not think I would learn to like him at all. But despite his flamboyant appearance, he ended up being a really good character, and it just goes to show, even with anime, especially with anime, you try not to judge a book by its cover because you might end up liking the book anyways.
Hot take. That's how you do it, Dave Filoni. You introduce them and you keep it brief, and then you kill them off. Because that shows that we really care. Needless to say, my favorite part is when the main character grabs the katana and launches it like a javelin at the demon as it leaves. I thought that was cool. That's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Sounds good.
That's fair.
Let's go with Dave Doesn't like.
We'll probably get there. Someday.
Yeah, I won't speak for Stefan, although I imagine some of our thoughts are the same. I'm a big fan of a lot of Dave Filoni's work. I think he's really overrated.
There you go. Tune in next time to hear. No, but I think that we just with our list here, we've gone to show the extreme, and then more real, and kind of build off of that to another extreme. While not as extreme as our first, definitely left a good impression with us regardless. And I think that goes to show you that you can do action scenes really well, whether it's based in reality, based in fantasy, maybe a mixture of both. What really sells, I think something we've just talked about a lot, is you gotta have good characters.
Good character development, good character conflict. You don't care about the characters. Why do you care about the fight?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And another thing, all the fights I'm looking at, all the fights we've done over these last 2 weeks, the movie fights and the TV fights, every fight has its own narrative and it plays its role within a larger narrative. An action scene is no different from any other scene. It needs to either tell us more about the characters, or it needs to tell us more about the story. Ideally, both. And it's just doing it through a largely visual medium rather than dialogue.
Any other final thoughts before we decide to close in on this? Okay. All right, Robert, you want to say the closing?
Yeah, I can start the closing. First and foremost, though, Aaron, where can we find you? Where we can find your work?
Excellent. Okay, so I have 2 sets of comics out currently on Webtoons. One is known as Pretzels. It is a supernatural type story about a child named Emdu who ends up in this crazy world full of slender kids, vampires, gremlins, mummies, and many other supernatural characters. You can find this on Webtoons, or you can also find it on Facebook at our Family Ghouls Comics, as well as Hammy and Christy, a short little kind of daily comic that you'd see in the newspaper. It's about a demon who's been assigned to this little girl who's too optimistic, too sweet for him to handle. It's a Hammy and Christy or Hammer Glue, depending on where you look. You can also find this on Our Family Ghouls or also on Webtoons. And be on the lookout for a third series known as Toomba, and more details to follow with that.
All right, awesome. So go check those out. And I know for specifically pretzels, I've been kind of following along on the story, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good, and it's kind of cool, Aaron. I got to compliment you because your artwork, you could see the progressive of how good it's getting. So
Thank you, Master.
go go check it out, everybody. And also, if you want to follow us on social media at of Cinematics on Twitter, and subscribe, comment what your favorite TV fight is. I think that's all. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all.
You got it?
Cool. Also, live show every Saturday at 7. Oh,
We try and be on time.
almost every Saturday, almost at 7. And also, if you can't watch it, there we have audio on anchor.fm. Down a link in the description. And that's it. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.